Well, good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you today? The 16th of August, and we're talking about today's field note, which is entitled, well, it has to do with leadership bad behavior. Many of ours do. We're encouraging good behavior. But this one is, how do you use a code word to help others regulate their bad behavior? Now, really, the headline is, how do you help others using a code word? But you could be the instigator of this one. You could say, I've got some things I'm trying to, and I'm going to give you a code word for you to help me with my problems. So it can be both ways.
Yeah. I love this one, by the way. I love it.
Okay.
I think I love it because I know that I practiced it just recently. So
really now you have an example like right out of the gate.
Yes, I do, because it came up, and it wasn't because it. So I'm impressed with myself, right? So oftentimes we think about these simple behaviors that we talk about, and this particular one is very behavioral, like what we're recommending.
All right,
and
I'm listening.
We do that because our entire approach to leadership development is let's find the behaviors of admired leaders and then practice those behaviors. And instead of dismissing the simple ones as, oh yeah, I do that. If you really think about it, you're like, oh, I can remember a time where recently I did it one time, versus is this something that you make a habit of practicing all the time? We don't want our credibility to suffer in any way. We want to make sure that we're always practicing these best practice behaviors all the time. And so the fact that I was like, oh, I did this code word thing just last week with my two sons, who we were anticipating. We were going into a family friend's house, and we were anticipating that my two youngest sons have a tendency to sibling rivalry themselves by having a third person in their social dynamic that they have a tendency to compete over. So they'll be fine.
Who's the better friend of this third person?
Right.
Got it.
So they'll do it by cutting each other down, but what they're really doing is competing for the attention and the affection of the third party. And they'll do it almost immediately, and they'll do it without thinking about it. So I was explaining to them both how they both always do this. It is. And I have a tendency not to speak in generalizations.
I was going to say, I think you when you were like, the two of you always do this. Like that violates a major principle.
You're right. I shouldn't have said it, but they do always do this. And it's always when a third person. So And so my younger son said in his defense, it's him who does it. It's not me as much. I'll do it every once in a while, but he'll do it all the time. And I said, I recognize that that's true, right? And then the older son didn't dispute it. It almost like, yeah, my brother's an idiot, so I have to point out these things.
Just being honest, right.
And so I said, but I pointed out the fact that when you do it, it actually discredits you. Like no one wants to be around you when you do this. No one wants to be around the both of you. So
now, important thing here, particularly on this point, which is when they're doing this, are they doing it when the other person is present?
Yes.
Okay, because it's worse if you do it behind their back. Like I'm constantly telling my youngest child, how much I love her more than her mother, right? But no, I'm just kidding. I don't do that. So the whole, like I was trying to duplicate the three-way, thing of the who loves who more, who's the best friend more. So, but you certainly, and this all happens all the time, which is if you're doing this behind somebody else's back, I just assume you're doing it about me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There's a certain lack of self-awareness around the fact that if you don't recognize that people think this behavior is eventually going to come around and I'm going to be the victim of it. There, of course, most reasonable people would think that. So there's profound a lack of awareness.
Now we have, and there's a lack of awareness on my part because I interrupted your story, which has actually fully gotten us off the track of getting to maybe the code word part that could help the situation.
I suggested it to both of them because the younger child desperately wanted to be able to communicate to the older person when they do this without embarrassing, because then it would just cause another argument. So I suggested, I said to the older one, do you think that this is a problem? And because we explained it from a point of view that it kind of destroys their own credibility, they agreed. So they were open to the idea of maybe if there's a practical way that I can be reminded of this, let's go ahead and do it. So entree for code word came in, right? So I knew where we were going to be in South Carolina, that it was going to be a place where there's frequently mosquitoes and bugs that are so. So I invited the younger one to like intentionally like, oh, you've got to
bat away. Yeah. Right. Now, could they also have tried to I slap?
Said, let's intentionally like make a move like it's over the top of your head. It's like, oh, you have a mosquito, right?
Yeah.
And where we were in South Carolina, there would never not be a time where that would be plausible.
Seen as awkward. That would be normal behavior.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
And so, and it also looked like the younger one was having care for the older one. Well, they actually were. They were taking time to defend themselves, but they were taking care to say, I'm helping you out here, right? And not only am I reminding you, but I'm also projecting as if you've got a mosquito, which I would be wiping away for you. And so I was like,
oh, I see. You were batting away from the other person's head.
Yes, right.
Yes, right.
So I was like to the older one, is it okay if the younger one does this to you, right? Is that all right?
You're going to feel all right with that? Yeah.
And he thought it was funny and he said, yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. And just because it was set up that the code word was accessible, the behavior dropped by 50%. Like there was much less of that.
Interesting.
Behavior, simply because the older one.
They were with cousins and other folks, and there was this. All of a sudden, they haven't seen people, and they're competing for attention.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Right.
But just because the code word was in place, that's really all it took for them to be reminded.
Sure.
Like, I don't want to have Alex to be able to be the younger one to be able to lord over me that he used the code word 4 times. Right. I don't want him to be able to use the code word any times. Right. So just instituting it is the key there. I don't think the use of it is necessarily the key as much as I'm going to put something in mind that says, and I think that's true. Like, so you mentioned it's not only for other people, right? It's not just you're using it on other people. Just the fact that their awareness is that the code word could be deployed.
Sure. Right.
Is something all by itself that helps with the behavior.
Well, that actually is in the research, that just the idea of I'm going to implement this. And so we know the intention is there, and that heightens it. You might actually, whether or not you actually go through with whatever the code word is or in anything, and implementation intention works in circumstances not just like this one as well, but just that alone is going to make it more top of mind for everybody. And I think I was unaware. I saw recently that there are patterns, maybe in circumstances that I'm less familiar with, like pilots in the cockpit and sometimes doctors in an operating room, where they'll have phrases. Particularly the illustration I saw was with pilots, where if people are talking about too many things other than what they're there to do, right? A little bit of chatter. Like maybe this is the whole thing of the Nathan Fielder's show on HBO this season around, how pilots and co-pilots communicate. They'll have a phrase like sterile cockpit. And that way it's like, I'm not insulting you by saying, hey, quit. I don't care about that she broke up with you, right? We're going to get back to what we're doing here. I'm not cutting you off. I just say, all right, sterile cockpit. It's just kind of like a very quick thing. Let's reset, like you might say. And there's like a word like that gets everybody back on. So that's actually good, not only to help somebody correct something, but it can also be for a 2-person dynamic, as well.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if
Kevin Costner used this. In the movie For Love of the Game, he portrays a pitcher in the midst of throwing a perfect game. He's in his 40s and the whole story of the movie is him on the mound. So, and you're getting flashbacks to different various, but the whole, like, what it takes to actually throw a perfect game in the major leagues is kind of put on display here. But every time Kevin Costner went up to like get on a pitch, he says to himself, clear the zone. And then there's this visual inside the movie where the fans don't matter. The stadium kind of melts away, and it's just him and his pitcher's mitt in the strike zone right there. And even the batter isn't there. It's just, and he says to himself, clear the zone. So sometimes you see pitchers on the mound talking to themselves, and I bet some of them have this kind of
phrase like that.
Where they
that's interesting. I actually wonder if that works. I like it as an illustration. I was just trying to think about the fact that I know in some kinds of performance, you can get so in the zone, so tunneled on a particular thing. And we see this in high intensity fitness programs where you start to redline. And Andrew Huberman has talked about this, where it's like you need to have a wider area perspective. Just even right now, I can start to look at my peripheral vision and zoom out, and I get a much better sense of where I am in the universe. And actually, that will actually decrease your level of intensity, metabolic arousal, all of those things, and you can actually perform better because you're seeing a more holistic picture rather than just a narrow one. So, despite the illustration, now you have me curious about whether or not that's true.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting because I find personally, the easiest way that I get into flow state is as a result of good conversation, right? Good conversation puts me into flow state where time just evaporates, and and so it's not coding work. It's not. There may have been a time or two when I was doing video editing a lot where I could get into flow state, but mostly for me, it's conversation.
Yeah.
But
now, what's really interesting is we've been doing these conversations about the Daily Field Note for a couple of years, for 15 minutes a day at least. We're hoping that someday we'll have one of these episodes where that actually happens, where we actually have a productive conversation. And it hasn't happened yet. But we can have the hope that we'll hit that flow state at some point. It's good to dream.
I think the flow state is more indicative of the fact that we would lose time. The fact that I've got a little red clock here counting down will kind of
our target time, right? And by the way, here's an idea. I'm just throwing it out there. I can't envision a scenario where you or I would need this. Let's say that there was a situation where perhaps sometimes two people that host a program could go down rabbit trails, or maybe they tell a story that goes too long or doesn't quite get to the point.
Yes.
Again, totally hypothetical.
Right.
Maybe
I think this is the only time where we've gone down a fourth diverting trail.
Maybe we could give the audience a code word.
Yes. Right.
That the listeners could put in chat or in a comment. And they could be like, I'm trying to think of what the good code word would be.
Right.
Get back on track, idiots. It could be that. Could be something just as subtle as that.
Yep, that's actually it. And at this point, we need to have the chat up just so that we could be paying attention to that kind of thing.
Yes, we should. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it happens, though, do you think it would be tough to respond to it as good productive feedback that you're thankful for, or will it feel like game time feedback that's being delivered to you that you'll have a small resentment that it comes
to? Because we do have in our platform, we actually look at the nature of when leaders give feedback to people, and there can be a problem about when you're giving feedback in the middle of performance, because you should really be in muscle memory at that point. And sometimes you can give directive feedback, but not evaluative feedback. Like a coach can say to somebody in the middle of a game, I need you to do this.
Yes.
But you can't be like, what just happened there?
Right.
Good or bad. Like if there's like, that was an amazing play. Well, then for the next 2 minutes, I'm trying to think like, I kind of felt like that was sort of routine. What did they say? I can't, it'll throw you off.
So it's an important distinction. We're not recommending that a code word is being created for the sake of giving game time feedback.
Yeah,
and if we're all sitting around a conference room and you have the tendency to belittle people or to move past ideas too quickly, or not to listen to Janice in particular, right? Then that might be the moment for a code word. You might say, "Oh, I'm conducting a meeting that is performance related." That might be the room where it's okay to give this kind of immediate game time code word, game time feedback. But not when you're up in front of 300 people giving a presentation.
For the record, Janice started it. So
see, you're making a joke, but this is exactly what would go on in my mind. If I have a problem with Janice and I'm like, I don't want to have a problem with Janice, and I'm inadvertently, zeroing in and picking on Janice. So help me not to pick on Janice anymore. Anytime you gave me the code word so that Janice didn't know what we're doing, but just I knew what we were doing, I would still be defensive. I would still have a tendency to kind of
Yeah. Now I can see, let me say, because I know we're in the last minute or so of this, but I can see wanting to have a code word around things that do matter. Like I'm trying to give up on this thing. I'm trying to stop doing this thing. And I need you to interrupt me when I am, whether it's telling a story that's too long. I think you try this out in some low stakes sort of scenarios. And whether that is, I've got a particular verbal tick that I use. And so you're just going to give me and it could be that even if, let's say it's in a work environment, it's going to be like, you're just going to tap your pen 3 times, which I just did. And so you're talking, I'm going to kind of be like, I'm just going to tap it and you'll be like, okay, apparently I just said that thing, right? Or I used the word right too much. And we had somebody, a leader in our firm, who was a fabulous speaker, who all of a sudden just started using the word right way too much. I'm not even against using filler words and some of those things. Some people are sticklers about them, but there's some literature around the naturalness of language. But once we drew it to that person's attention, I would have been prepared that if I needed to, I could have said and caught them so they were aware. In some superhuman effort, that person eliminated that word for a very long time. Now, I have seen them once or twice where they've slipped back into that pattern and all of a sudden they'll be telling stories and they'll be using the word right a lot, but then it'll go away, right? But I just said right. So if you were trying to improve something like that, posture, small behavioral issues, I think are probably really conducive to this kind of reminder. And then you can decide if you want to ratchet it up and get to that level of, well, I have a tendency to belittle people. Yes. Now, if your tendency is to belittle people, I hope that the code word helps, but you might need deeper and more serious help than that.
Right. Yeah, a conversation coming up, we should talk about how, the best way to form the right kind of code word as well, so that the belittling doesn't take too much shape.
Right. Yeah. I still like just being direct, being like, hey, you're belittling her. Right.
Right.
Now, the point in the field note is you want to act, it should be oblivious to everybody else. It shouldn't even be aware. Like,
right.
We could just do the mosquito one here. Like if I'm telling a story and it's going on too long, you just start going.
Right. Over your head. Yeah. You can do that through Zoom. Hopefully I'll never see it, but I'll know what it means when it's used on me.
Okay.
All right. Bye now.